Hello, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Michael Cross. I am the author of both The Destiny of Our Past and the Freedom from Conscious book series. Also, I'm an educator, and, well, I just encourage you, if you like stimulating conversations and an analysis of psychological issues as well as politics, please subscribe to my channel. Also, check the comments section and check out my website that I will leave a link to. Anyway, here's a question I've been asked quite a few times in comment sections, and that is, how do you recognize the difference between a narcissist and a psychopath? The interesting thing is that both share a lot of characteristics. In fact, they're both listed in what's known as the dark triad of personality disorders. You throw in a little Machiavellianism and you've got the dark triad. However, there is a difference between the two. But first, I just want to point out the similarities. Both have very low levels of empathy. Both have much lower levels of feeling of guilt than most people do. In fact, when it comes to empathy and guilt, let's get back to empathy. When it comes to empathy, I would say that it's similar to a computer when you're hooking up to Wi-Fi. If you have a good Wi-Fi connection, you have like those 5 bars that show up. And if you have a poor one, you may have 1 bar. Now, both will enable you to use the internet. But one will be much faster and one will be much slower. And people with psychopathy and narcissism tend to have more towards the 1 bar. And in fact, they're more likely to have feelings of empathy for those that are very close to them. Like children or a spouse, as long as that spouse is there for them. Now, some of the other similarities can be a grandiose sense of the self. But then we get into something that's kind of interesting. One of the differences is boredom. Psychopaths get bored really fast. They want to have things happening all the time. In fact, they like novel things. I'm not saying that people that go on trips to remote or even dangerous areas are all psychopaths, but thrill-seeking for them could be to go into an area that is somewhat dangerous. Adrenaline tourism. A narcissist wouldn't really be into that unless it would give them some bragging rights. To say, oh yeah, I went so-and-so, and I went backpacking in an area that had malaria or whatever, if they could brag about it. So there's a distinction there when it comes to boredom. The psychopath is looking for ways to get excited. And often that's things that are different than what most people consider exciting. They actually consider them dangerous and foolhardy, whereas a narcissist is more likely to be more down to earth, so to speak, in those kinds of areas. Another difference between the two is that a narcissist is always wanting their best image. They want their persona to be perfect with the population. They want everyone to recognize just how wonderful they are. Now, many psychopaths have this trait as well, but not in that same level. If things go well for them because they have a lot of the limelight and glory and people are saying how wonderful they are, all the better. But it's not something that's going to cause them to lose sleep. I heard of one politician who would get up in the morning and immediately go to the newspaper and check what was being written about him. Just to make sure the stories were really nice. Now, a psychopath might do the same thing, but their motivation would be, how is this affecting me in the polls? Whereas the narcissist is like, do they still love me? And that gives you another indication of a difference between a psychopath and a narcissist. A psychopath is someone who they know they're different. They know that they don't think the way others do, and they often use that as a method of manipulation. They actually, if they're aware of their condition, they see themselves as superior. There's a sense of arrogancy about them. Whereas many narcissists aren't that way. They may be arrogant and thinking, I'm the best person ever, I'm the center of the universe, but that air of arrogance may not be quite as high as with a psychopath. Another huge difference is a psychopath, let's say they're a politician, they will do what they need to do, and they usually don't change course unless it means staying in power. They don't really care what the public thinks of them. And, in regular life, that would be true for people around them as well. They don't seem to have a sense of embarrassment that a lot of people have. The narcissist, since their persona means everything to them, if they're a politician and they see that a policy that they're doing is making people not like them anymore, they'll backtrack. They'll say, no, let's change that. Let's alter this policy because my adoring fans are not loving me anymore. And so that's a difference there. Now, some people have said that maybe it's safer to have a psychopath as, for instance, a president than a narcissist, because a psychopath has their policy agenda and they will do, A to B to B to C and so forth. Whereas a narcissist may be like, oh, no, let's change policies because I'm becoming unpopular. And again, the psychopath says they will look at unpopularity and think, okay, I got to make sure I get reelected, so I'll do what I need to do to get reelected. Whereas the psychopath takes it personally, kind of like, do they love me anymore? I mean, what's going on here? And so they adore the crowds. Psychopaths know how to manipulate crowds. Narcissists know how to manipulate crowds. But the psychopath is engaged in manipulation, whereas the narcissist is trying to show everyone why they're so wonderful when they're in front of people. Now, in conclusion, a lot of these personality disorders, and not just personality disorders, many things that you actually find as mental conditions, but just as personality disorders, for instance, have a huge amount of overlap. And so a person ultimately could be someone who displays a high level of something that's associated with another personality disorder. So a psychopath could have many of these traits of narcissism as well. And a narcissist may have certain elements of psychopathy. And, nothing just clear cut. It's not like, oh, you've got, a difference between, you go into the doctor to find out if you have strep throat or you just have a viral infection that's causing you the same symptoms. It doesn't work that way with psychology. Many of these things blend in with each other, and it makes diagnosis extremely difficult. But it gives you a sense of some of the differences that you can look for in making those determinations. And one thing I would want people to remember is that while every single person on earth has elements of personality disorders, they also don't have enough of them to get into a diagnosis. Personality disorders are merely behaviors and attitudes and so forth that put you into the extreme of human psychology, of perception, and so forth. It doesn't mean they're mentally ill. It just means they think differently. And it's kind of interesting that a lot of people don't understand how someone, for instance, with psychopathy would think, because they can't imagine being able to do something like manipulate people on, let's say, a social media platform to buy a product or to vote for this candidate over this candidate and not feel any guilt whatsoever, and instead feel a sense of personal satisfaction, like you just won the game. They don't understand that that's the way many people in power think, that it's a game. And points are like, the votes that you get. So this is why, for instance, psychopaths do very well in marketing and politics. But at the same time, narcissists also do well in these fields. They just have a few defining differences that will therefore give you an indication of which one is which. Anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about for now. We'll come back to this subject later. Thank you. And again, don't forget to subscribe. Bye now.